大家好，我是 Jenny， 欢迎来到沉思者 J。今天要讲一个超精彩的故事，这是两个天才的世纪对决，一位叫做爱迪生，一位叫做特斯拉，他们的较量改变了全世界。这场较量有个名字，它叫做电流大战，听起来就很热血，对不对？而且它真的非常重要，因为你现在用的电，就是这场大战的结果。准备好了吗？我们现在就出发。先从爱迪生说起，他全名叫汤马斯·爱迪生，他在1847年出生，故乡是美国俄亥俄州，那是一个安静的小镇。他从小就和别人不一样，他的问题多到没完没了，他总是问为什么，他总是想动手试试看。这种孩子让老师很头大，他只上了几个月的学，就被老师认为跟不上，于是他离开了学校。还好他的母亲很了不起，母亲以前当过老师，他决定亲自在家教他。他没有浇熄孩子的好奇心，反而让火苗越烧越旺。爱迪生因此爱上了学习，他更爱上了自己动手做。他在家里弄了个小实验室，从小就开始做各种实验。爱迪生很早就出来工作，他在火车上卖报纸，还卖糖果和零食。他甚至在车厢里做实验，有一次差点引发火灾。他也学会了发送电报，他成了一名电报员。这份工作对他影响很深，让他彻底摸熟了电。他白天工作，晚上钻研，他脑中总是冒出新点子，他不断改良电报的技术。他在这一行混得很熟，他甚至改良了股票报价机，这项发明替他赚进大钱。他卖掉专利赚到第一桶金，有了钱他更敢放手去做。他建立了自己的实验室，地点在新泽西的门洛公园，那是一座发明的工厂。他把发明变成了流水线，人们叫他门洛公园的魔法师，因为他像在变魔术，总能变出惊人的新东西。爱迪生的发明改变了世界，最有名的就是电灯泡。其实电灯不是他首创，但是他做出了实用的版本。他和团队试了上千种材料，只为找到耐用的灯丝。他失败了无数次，但他从不放弃。他说他没有失败，他只是找到行不通的方法。他的实验室总是灯火通明，里面挤满了助手和工人，大家日夜不停地工作，为的是一颗灯泡，反复尝试。他们连竹子纤维都试过，最后找到了合适的材料。这份毅力真的令人佩服。最后他成功了，电灯走进了千家万户，黑夜从此被点亮。爱迪生还有别的杰作，他发明了留声机，这是人类的一大奇迹。人们第一次能留住声音，能把说话和歌声录下来，还能再放出来听。当时的人都惊呆了，他们觉得简直是魔法。爱迪生还改良了电影摄影机，他帮忙打开了电影时代。他名下的专利超过1000项，这个数字非常惊人。他几乎一辈子都在发明。有件事很多人不知道，爱迪生的听力其实不太好，但他从不把这当成缺点。他说安静反而让他更专心，他把困难变成了优势。爱迪生有一句名言，这句话流传了100多年，天才是1%的灵感，再加上99%的汗水。这句话道尽了他的信念，他相信努力胜过天分。他是个不折不扣的工作狂，他常常连续工作好几天，累了就在桌上眯一下。他对成功有强烈的渴望，而且他不只是发明家，他更是精明的生意人。他懂得把发明变成钱，他知道市场要的是什么。他创立了爱迪生电力公司，这家公司不断壮大，后来变成了奇异公司，奇异到今天还是巨头。所以爱迪生很特别，他左手搞发明，右手做生意，两手都抓得很稳。有人说了一句很传神的话，爱迪生是企业家中的发明家，特斯拉是发明家中的诗人。爱迪生想的是怎么赚钱，特斯拉想的是怎么改变世界，他们的出发点完全不同。好，我们换个主角，现在轮到特斯拉登场。他全名叫尼古拉特斯拉，他在1856年出生， 故乡在今天的克罗埃西亚，当时那里属于奥地利帝国。他的父亲是一位神父，他的母亲虽然没受过教育，却心灵手巧，爱发明小工具。特斯拉可能遗传了妈妈，他从小就聪明得吓人，他的记忆力超乎常人，他能把整本书背下来。他还有一种神奇的能力，他能在脑海中组装机器，不用画图就能让它运转。他甚至能在脑中测试，看看哪里会出问题。这种天赋实在太罕见，简直像会魔法一样。特斯拉年轻时去读工科，他在欧洲几所学校求学，他的数学和物理非常强。有一天他想通了一件事，那就是交流电的奥秘。传说他在公园里散步，灵感突然像闪电击中他，他在沙地上画出设计，那是交流马达的构想。这个画面成了传奇，从此交流电成了他的使命。当时世界都用直流电，只有他看见了不同的路。他相信交流电更厉害，这个信念在心中燃烧。特斯拉决定去美国，因为美国机会更多，也因为那里有爱迪生。他非常崇拜爱迪生。1884年他渡海而来，他抵达纽约的时候，口袋里只剩几分钱，但他满怀理想和抱负。他带着一封介绍信，那封信是要给爱迪生的，写信的人是爱迪生的朋友。信上写了一句名言：我认识两个伟大的人，一个是您爱迪生，另一个就是这位年轻人。爱迪生看了很满意，他当场就雇佣了特斯拉。于是天才遇上了天才，两人共事的故事很短，因为他们实在合不来。爱迪生讲求实作和苦干，他靠不断尝试找答案；特斯拉讲求理论和计算，他靠缜密的思考找答案。两人的风格南辕北辙。爱迪生觉得特斯拉太理想，特斯拉觉得爱迪生太粗糙。最大的分歧还是电，爱迪生死守直流电，特斯拉力推交流电。这个矛盾无法调和，战争的种子悄悄埋下。决裂还有一段插曲，那就是有名的奖金事件。爱迪生请特斯拉改良机器，他承诺做好给5万美元。5万美元在当时是巨款，特斯拉拼了命去做，他连续工作好几个月，最后真的成功了。他开心地去领奖金，爱迪生却哈哈大笑，他说那只是开个玩笑。他说特斯拉不懂美式幽默，特斯拉气得当场辞职。这段恩怨从此流传，不过这故事有点争议，它出自特斯拉的回忆，有些学者觉得未必全真，但两人的决裂是事实。特斯拉决定单飞，他要证明自己是对的。这里我们暂停一下，先搞懂一个关键问题：直流电和交流电差在哪？直流电的方向是固定的，电流永远往同一边跑，就像河水单向流动。交流电就不一样了，它的方向会来回变换，一下往这边一下往那边，就像秋千来回摆荡。听起来只是小小的差别，其实影响大得惊人。关键就在送电的距离。直流电有个致命的弱点，它没办法传得太远，电力走一小段就变弱。爱迪生的系统范围很小，大概只能覆盖附近几条街，想供电给整座城市，就得盖一大堆发电厂，这个成本高得吓人。交流电却能破解难题，它能用变压器调整电压，先把电压拉到很高，高电压就能传得很远，到了目的地再降回来。这就是交流电的王牌，便宜又能送到远方。特斯拉设计了完整的方案，他发明了交流感应马达，这种马达简单又耐用。他还设计了多箱系统，能让电力稳定地输送。这些发明非常超前，可是光有发明还不够，他需要资金和工厂。这时候贵人出现了，他叫乔治·威斯汀豪斯。威斯汀豪斯是工业大亨，他一眼看出交流电的价值，他买下了特斯拉的专利。两人决定携手合作，他们要挑战爱迪生的霸权。电流大战正式开打，这是一场硬碰硬的对决，一边是爱迪生的直流电，一边是特斯拉的交流电。爱迪生眼看情势不妙， 交流电的优势太明显，他决定改变策略。他要打一场舆论战，他要让大家害怕交流电。他的手段相当激烈，他公开做电击示范，他用交流电电死小动物，他想证明交流电很危险。这些画面让民众很害怕，这是一场心理战术。他散播恐惧来打击对手。爱迪生还有更狠的招，他暗中推动电椅死刑。电椅用的就是交流电，他想把交流电和死亡绑住。他希望大家想到交流电，就会联想到可怕的死亡。他甚至发明了一个新词，被电死就说成被吸污掉。吸污指的就是威斯汀豪斯。这招实在很阴险，本来是公平的技术竞争，却变成了恶意的抹黑，场面越来越激烈，两方都杀红了眼。这场大战打得非常难看，报纸天天都在报道，民众被搞得人心惶惶，有人挺爱迪生，有人挺特斯拉，整个美国都在看好戏，但背后其实是巨大的利益，谁赢了谁就能赚进大钱。电力市场实在太庞大了，不过科学终究会说话，交流电的优势挡不住，它便宜又能传得很远，恐吓阻止不了进步。真正的转捩点来了，那是1893年，芝加哥要办世界博览会，这是一场超级盛会，全世界都在看。博览会需要大量的电，谁能点亮这场盛会，谁就是电力之王，这是兵家必争之地。威斯汀豪斯参加了竞标，他用交流电开出低价，他的方案又便宜又好，最后他赢得了合约。博览会开幕那一晚，数十万盏灯同时亮起，整个会场灯火通明，亮得像白天一样，观众全都看呆了，他们从没见过这种场面。这是交流电的胜利宣言，特斯拉的梦想照亮夜空，全世界都亲眼见证，交流电才是未来。接着还有一场关键战役，那就是尼加拉瓜瀑布。这是美加边境的巨大瀑布，水量大得惊人，人们想用它来发电，这是一个世纪大工程，所有公司都抢着要。最后交流电方案胜出，特斯拉的设计被选中。1895年电厂开始运转，瀑布的力量化为电力，而且送到了远方的城市。这次成功太重要了，它证明交流电能大规模运作。这座电厂至今还在运转，它供应了周边广大的地区。这里还有一段动人的插曲。威斯汀豪斯曾承受巨大压力，他几乎压上了整间公司，他甚至求特斯拉减少权利金，特斯拉竟然爽快答应了。他当场撕掉了那份合约，他说友谊比金钱更重要。这个举动让人很感动，却也让他错失了巨额财富。到这里大局已经底定，交流电赢得了最终胜利，电流大战画上句点。今天全世界的电网几乎都采用交流电，这就是特斯拉的遗产。你家墙上的插座流的就是交流电，你每天都在享受成果，只是你可能没注意到，这场战争的影响早就融进了日常生活。特斯拉的厉害不止这些，他还有很多惊人的发明。他做出了特斯拉线圈，能产生壮观的人造闪电。他研究无线传输电力，他梦想让电飞在空中。他做过遥控的小船，那是遥控技术的先驱。他在无线电上也有贡献。他和马可尼有过专利之争，多年以后法院还他公道。他真的是一位梦想家。他曾在科罗拉多做实验，他制造出巨大的人造闪电，雷声传到好几公里以外。他想证明电能无线传送。后来他盖了沃登克里夫塔，那是一座野心勃勃的高塔。他想用它传送电力和讯息。这个梦想超越了那个时代，他的脑袋总是领先时代。不过特斯拉也有怪癖，他非常害怕细菌，他不喜欢和人握手，他对数字3很着迷，他做事常常要重复3次。他晚年很喜欢鸽子，他喂养照顾很多鸽子，他说有一只白鸽是他最爱。这些怪癖让他很特别。天才往往有点与众不同，这也是他迷人的地方。那2位主角后来怎么了？他们的结局很不一样。 先说爱迪生，他晚年依然非常活跃，他继续发明，继续做生意，他的公司越来越庞大，他名利双收，受人敬仰。他在1931年过世，享年84岁，全国都为他哀悼。据说那天很多人关灯，用熄灯1分钟来纪念他。他是公认的发明大王，他的成就无人能否认，他活成了美国梦的象征。特斯拉的结局就凄凉多了，他是个纯粹的理想主义者，他不擅长处理金钱，他常为梦想散尽家财，他最大的梦想是无线书店，他盖了一座巨大的高塔，想把电力免费送给全世界，可惜资金中途断掉了，高塔最后被拆除，他的许多计划没能完成，他越来越穷困潦倒，他的晚年非常孤独，他在1943年过世，他在纽约的旅馆里离世，享年86岁，身边没有家人陪伴，这位点亮世界的天才，自己却走在黑暗里，这个对比让人鼻酸，但历史没有忘记他，磁感应强度的单位，就用他的名字命名，那个单位叫做特斯拉，每个学物理的人都会念到，这是对他最好的纪念。现在我们回头想一想，这场大战到底谁赢了？答案其实很有意思，从技术上看特斯拉赢了，交流电统治了整个世界，从生意上看爱迪生赢了，他生前名利双收，风光无限，这是两种不同的胜利，一种是理想的胜利，一种是现实的胜利，你觉得哪一种更可贵呢？爱迪生教会我们努力，他把点子变成真实的产品，他让发明走进生活，他证明苦干也能成就伟大。特斯拉教会我们做梦，他敢想象不可能的事，他为未来铺好了道路，他证明远见能照亮世界。其实两个人都很伟大，他们只是选了不同的路，一个务实，一个浪漫，一个重眼前，一个看未来。最有趣的是时间给了两人不同的评价，爱迪生在当时更受欢迎，他生前就名满天下，特斯拉却在死后才封神。今天很多人崇拜特斯拉，连知名的电动车品牌都用他的名字当招牌，这说明了一件事，时代的眼光会改变，真正的价值经得起时间，被误解的天才终会发光，这也是故事最温柔的部分。这个故事还有更深的一层，它让我们看见人性的两面，一面是理想与纯粹，一面是务实与野心。其实我们每个人心里都住着一个特斯拉，也住着一个爱迪生。有时候我们想追逐梦想，有时候我们的面对现实，怎么平衡这两者，就是人生的大智慧。最后我想说一句话，天才和商人并不对立，最理想的状态是两者兼具，有梦想也要有实力，有理想也要懂现实。特斯拉和爱迪生就像一枚硬币的两面，他们一起点亮了现代世界，我们今天享受的光明，都该谢谢这两位巨人。好了，今天就讲到这里。电流大战精彩又深刻，它不只是科技的故事，更是关于人性的故事。希望你今天有收获，也希望你记住这两个名字，爱迪生和特斯拉。下次你按下电灯开关，不妨想起这场精彩的大战，想想电的背后有多少故事。科技从来不是冷冰冰的，它充满了人的热情和挣扎。喜欢的话记得订阅，我们下次见咯。Hello everyone, I'm Jenny. Welcome to Thinker J. Today I want to tell you a truly thrilling story. It is the tale of two geniuses who went head to head in one of the greatest rivalries in all of history. One of them was named Thomas Edison. The other was named Nikola Tesla. Their battle changed the entire world, and it even has a name. People call it the War of the Currents. Doesn't that sound dramatic? Well, it really was. Because the electricity you are using at this very moment, the power flowing into your phone and your lights, is the direct result of this epic struggle. So are you ready? Let us dive right in, because this is a story with sparks, betrayal, lightning, and two of the most brilliant minds who ever lived. Let us begin with Edison. His full name was Thomas Edison, and he was born in the year 1847 in the American state of Ohio. It was a quiet little town, the kind of place where not much ever seemed to happen. But from a very young age, Edison was different from everyone around him. He had an endless stream of questions, and he simply would not stop asking them. He always wanted to know why. He always wanted to get his hands on something and take it apart and try it out for himself. A child like that, as you can imagine, gave his poor teachers quite a headache. In fact, he attended a formal school for only a few months before his teacher decided he simply could not keep up with the other students. Some say the teacher even called his mind addled and slow. And so, very early on, young Thomas left the classroom for good. But here is the lucky part of the story. His mother was a truly remarkable woman. She had once been a teacher herself, and she refused to believe that her son was slow. She decided to educate him at home, all by herself. Instead of putting out the little spark of his curiosity, she gently fed it and let the flame grow brighter and brighter. Because of her patience and her faith in him, Edison fell deeply in love with learning. And even more than that, he fell in love with building things with his own two hands. While still just a boy, he set up a small laboratory in the basement of his home and began running all sorts of experiments. He read every science book he could find, and then he tried to make the experiments happen for real. Edison started working at a very early age, because his family did not have much money. He sold newspapers on the trains that rolled through his region. He also sold candy and snacks to the passengers, calling out the headlines as he walked up and down the aisles. He was a clever little salesman. He even set up a tiny experiment station inside one of the baggage cars, so he could keep tinkering during the long journeys. One time, one of his chemistry experiments went wrong and nearly set the train car on fire, which did not make the conductor very happy at all. It was around this time that Edison learned how to send and receive messages by telegraph, and he became a skilled telegraph operator. That single job had a deep and lasting effect on the rest of his life. It let him become truly familiar with the strange and invisible force of electricity. He worked during the day, sending dots and dashes across the wires, and then he studied and tinkered late into the night. His restless mind was always bubbling over with new ideas. He kept finding ways to improve the telegraph itself, and he grew very comfortable in the world of wires and signals. He even improved a machine that printed out stock prices, and that invention earned him a serious amount of money. He took that money and poured it straight back into his research, because he believed that every dollar should be spent where it mattered most. With that early fortune, Edison finally had the freedom to dream much bigger. He built his very own laboratory in a place called Menlo Park, in New Jersey. And this was no ordinary workshop. It was something the world had never really seen before. It was, in a sense, a factory built entirely for the purpose of inventing. He gathered a team of skilled assistants and turned the messy, unpredictable act of invention into something almost like an assembly line. Ideas went in one end, and finished products came out the other. People started calling him the Wizard of Menlo Park, because he seemed to perform real magic, always pulling astonishing new creations out of thin air. Edison's inventions truly changed the world we live in. The most famous of them all was the electric light bulb. Now, to be completely fair and accurate, Edison did not invent the very first electric light. Several other inventors had been working on the idea before him. But what Edison created was the first version that was actually practical, affordable, and long-lasting enough for everyday people to use. He and his hardworking team tested thousands upon thousands of different materials, all just to find the perfect filament, the thin thread inside the bulb that would glow without burning out too quickly. His laboratory blazed with light deep into the night as they worked. They tried metals. They tried threads. They even tried carbonized strands of bamboo. He failed countless times, and yet he never once gave up. He had a wonderful way of looking at failure. He liked to say that he had not failed at all. He had simply discovered many thousands of ways that would not work. And in the end, after all that struggle, he succeeded. Electric light spread into millions of homes around the world, and the darkness of night was finally pushed back. Edison had other masterpieces too. He invented the phonograph, which was a genuine miracle for all of humanity. For the very first time in history, people could capture sound itself. They could record a voice speaking or a person singing, and then play it back later to listen again and again. The people of that era were absolutely stunned when they first heard it. Many of them honestly believed it was some kind of trick or sorcery. There is also something about Edison that many people do not know. His hearing was actually quite poor, and it grew worse as he got older. But he never treated this as a weakness. In fact, he claimed that the quiet helped him concentrate, and that it kept him from being distracted by useless chatter. He turned a real difficulty into a strange kind of advantage. Edison also improved the motion picture camera and helped throw open the doors to the entire age of cinema. By the end of his life, he held more than 1,000 patents in his own name, which is a truly staggering number. He spent almost every waking hour of his life inventing. Edison also had a famous saying that has been repeated for more than 100 years. He declared that genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. That single sentence captured his entire philosophy of life. He believed, with all his heart, that hard work and relentless effort mattered far more than raw natural talent. He was a workaholic in the truest sense of the word. He often worked for days at a stretch with barely any rest, and when exhaustion finally caught up with him, he would simply lie down on a table or a workbench and nap for a short while before jumping right back into the work. He had a fierce and burning hunger for success. And here's the key thing that you must understand about Edison. He was not only an inventor. He was also a remarkably sharp and clever businessman. He understood, better than almost anyone of his time, how to turn a clever invention into real money. He knew what the market wanted, and he knew how to sell it. He founded a company called the Edison Electric Light Company, and that company kept growing and growing. It eventually became the corporation we know today as General Electric, a giant that is still famous all over the world. So Edison was a very special kind of man. With one hand he created brilliant inventions, and with the other hand he ran a powerful business. And he held both of them very steadily at the same time. Alright, let us switch now to our other main character. It is finally time for Tesla to step onto the stage. His full name was Nikola Tesla, and he was born in the year 1856. His homeland lies in what we now call Croatia, although at the time that region belonged to the Austrian Empire. His father was a priest, a serious and learned man. His mother had never received any formal education at all, and yet she was wonderfully clever with her hands and loved to invent little household gadgets and tools to make daily chores easier. It seems quite likely that Tesla inherited his inventive gifts from her. From a very young age, he was almost frighteningly intelligent. His memory reached far beyond anything ordinary. He could memorize entire books, word for word, after reading them only once or twice. And he possessed one truly magical ability that set him apart from nearly every other person. He could build and assemble a complete machine entirely inside his own mind. Without ever drawing a single diagram on paper, he could make that machine run in his imagination. He could even test it in his head, letting it operate for weeks, just to see where the weak points and problems might appear. That kind of talent is incredibly rare. It really was something close to a form of magic. When Tesla was young, he studied engineering, and he attended several schools across Europe. His mathematics and his physics were absolutely extraordinary, often leaving his professors amazed. And then one day, he figured something out that would shape the rest of his life. He grasped, all at once, the secret of alternating current. The legend goes that he was walking through a park at sunset, reciting poetry to a friend, when the inspiration struck him like a sudden bolt of lightning. He grabbed a stick and drew his entire design right there in the sand. It was the concept for an alternating current motor, a device that many of the best engineers had said was impossible to build. That single moment became the stuff of legend. From that day forward, alternating current became his great life mission. At the time, you must remember, the whole world ran on direct current. Tesla alone seemed to see a completely different path forward. He believed, deep in his bones, that alternating current was far more powerful and far more useful. That conviction burned inside his heart like a furnace. So Tesla decided to go to America. He went partly because America offered so much more opportunity for a young inventor, and partly because the great Edison himself was there. You see, Tesla deeply admired Edison. He looked up to him as a hero. In the year 1884, he crossed the vast ocean. And when he finally arrived in the busy harbor of New York, he had only a few cents left in his pocket. But he was overflowing with ideals, ambition, and hope. He carried with him a single precious letter of introduction, and that letter was addressed directly to Edison. The man who wrote it was a friend and business associate of Edison, and the letter contained a now famous line. It said, roughly, that the writer knew two truly great men in the world. One of them was Edison himself. And the other was this remarkable young man now standing before him. Edison read the letter and was pleased by it. He hired Tesla on the spot. And so, at long last, genius met genius face to face. The story of their time working together, however, turned out to be a very short one, because the two of them simply could not get along. Edison valued hands-on effort and sheer, stubborn hard labor above all else. He found his answers through endless trial and error, testing one thing after another until something finally worked. Tesla, on the other hand, valued theory, mathematics, and careful calculation. He found his answers through precise and elegant thinking, working out the solution in his mind before ever lifting a tool. Their working styles were completely and utterly opposite. Edison thought that Tesla was far too idealistic and lost in his theories. Tesla thought that Edison was far too crude and wasteful in his methods. But the biggest gap of all between them was electricity itself. Edison clung tightly to direct current. Tesla pushed hard for alternating current. That deep conflict simply could not be reconciled, no matter what. And so the seeds of a great war were quietly planted. There is also a famous episode tied to the moment of their split. It is often called the bonus incident. According to the story, Edison asked Tesla to redesign and improve some of his direct current machines, which were not working very well. Edison promised him a reward of $50,000 if he could get the job done. Now in those days, $50,000 was an absolutely enormous fortune, enough to set a man up for life. So Tesla threw himself into the work with everything he had. He labored for many long months, often without rest, and in the end he truly succeeded. He fixed the machines and made them far better. Filled with pride and excitement, he went to collect his promised reward. But Edison just laughed at him. He said that it had only been a joke all along. He said that Tesla simply did not understand American humor. Tesla was so deeply insulted and so furious that he resigned right there on the spot. That bitter tale has been retold many times ever since. Now, I should be honest with you. This particular story is a little bit controversial among historians. It comes mainly from Tesla's own memories and writings, and some scholars believe it may not be entirely accurate. But one thing is absolutely certain. The two men did split apart, and the break between them was real and final. Tesla decided to go out completely on his own. He was determined to prove, once and for all, that he was right. Let us pause here for just a moment to understand one crucial question, because it sits at the very heart of this whole story. What is the actual difference between direct current and alternating current? In direct current, the flow moves in a single fixed direction. The current always travels the same way, much like a river flowing steadily in one direction toward the sea. Alternating current is different. Its direction switches rapidly back and forth, again and again. One moment it flows this way, and the next moment it flows that way, much like a child on a swing rocking back and forth, back and forth. Now this might sound like only a tiny technical difference, hardly worth fighting over. But its impact turned out to be astonishingly large. The key to everything lies in one simple thing. It lies in the distance over which you can send the power. Direct current had one fatal weakness. It could not travel very far at all. The power grew weak and faded away after only a short distance. So Edison's electrical system could only cover a very small area, roughly just a few nearby city streets at most. To supply electricity to an entire large city, you would have to build a whole crowd of power stations, one every few blocks, and the cost of doing that was frighteningly, impossibly high. Alternating current, however, could crack this very puzzle. It could use a clever device called a transformer to raise and lower the voltage. First it would push the voltage extremely high. High voltage, it turns out, can travel a very long way through the wires without losing much strength. Then, once it finally reached its distant destination, a transformer could safely bring the voltage back down again for everyday use. That was the great trump card of alternating current. It was cheap, and it could reach faraway places that direct current could never hope to touch. Tesla designed a complete and brilliant system around this idea. He invented the alternating current induction motor, a clever motor that was simple, reliable, and durable. He also designed something called a polyphase system, which allowed electrical power to be delivered smoothly and steadily, without dangerous flickering. These inventions were astonishingly far ahead of their time. But inventions alone, no matter how brilliant, were not enough. To turn his dreams into reality, Tesla needed money, and he needed factories. And that is exactly when a powerful benefactor appeared in his life. His name was George Westinghouse. Westinghouse was a major and respected industrialist, a man who had already made his name with the air brake for trains. He saw the value of Tesla's alternating current in a single glance. He bought Tesla's patents for a good sum, and the two of them decided to join forces. Together, they would challenge Edison and his dominance over the electrical world. And so the War of the Currents broke out in full and open force. It was a head-on collision between two giants. To really feel the stakes here, you have to picture the world at that exact moment. Electricity was brand new, mysterious, and a little bit frightening to ordinary people. Most of them had grown up with candles and gas lamps. Now there was this strange invisible force that could glow, and shock, and even kill. Whoever controlled how that force was delivered would shape the daily life of every household for generations to come. This was not just a contest between two inventors. It was a contest over the future itself. On one side stood Edison and his familiar, trusted direct current. On the other side stood Tesla and Westinghouse with their bold new alternating current. Edison could clearly see that the situation was beginning to turn against him. The advantages of alternating current were simply too obvious for anyone to ignore. So he decided to change his entire strategy. If he could not win on pure technical merit, then he would fight a war of public opinion instead. He wanted to make ordinary people afraid of alternating current, deeply and personally afraid. And his methods, I must warn you, were quite aggressive and disturbing. He held public demonstrations of electric shocks. He used alternating current to kill small animals in front of horrified crowds. He wanted to prove, in the most dramatic way possible, that alternating current was deadly and dangerous. Those terrible images frightened the public badly. It was, in plain terms, a campaign of psychological warfare. He deliberately spread fear in order to strike a blow at his rival. Edison had an even more ruthless move up his sleeve. He quietly worked behind the scenes to push for the electric chair to be used in executions, and that electric chair ran on alternating current. His goal was sinister and clever. He wanted to tie alternating current directly to death itself in the public mind. He hoped that whenever ordinary people thought about alternating current, they would immediately picture something horrifying and final. He even helped to coin a brand new word for it. To be executed in the electric chair was described as being Westinghoused, which was an obvious and cruel jab at his rival George Westinghouse. It was a truly underhanded tactic. What should have been a fair and honest contest of technology had instead twisted into a campaign of malicious smears and fear. The whole scene grew more and more heated by the day. The newspapers reported on it constantly. The public grew anxious and confused. Some people sided with Edison, and others sided with Tesla and Westinghouse. The entire nation watched the spectacle unfold. But behind all the drama lay enormous sums of money. Whoever won this war would earn a tremendous fortune, because the market for electricity was simply gigantic. But in the end, science itself would have the final word. The advantages of alternating current could not be held back forever by fear. It was cheaper, and it could travel far. Intimidation, no matter how dramatic, could not stop the steady march of progress. And then, at last, the real turning point arrived. It was the year 1893. The great city of Chicago was about to host the World's Fair, an enormous international exhibition. The whole world was watching with excitement. The fair would need an absolutely massive amount of electricity to light up its grand buildings and dazzling displays. Whoever could win the contract to light up this glorious event would, in effect, be crowned the king of electrical power. It was a prize that everyone desperately wanted to seize. Westinghouse entered the bidding for the contract. Using the cheaper alternating current, he was able to offer a remarkably low price. His plan was both affordable and excellent, and in the end he won the contract fair and square. On the opening night of the fair, the moment finally came. Hundreds of thousands of electric lights came blazing on, all at once, in a single breathtaking instant. The entire fairground lit up as bright as daytime, glowing against the dark sky. Imagine standing in that crowd. For your whole life, night had meant darkness, shadows, and the flicker of a flame. And then, suddenly, a whole city of light appeared before your eyes, steady and brilliant and silent. People wept. People cheered. Some simply stood frozen in wonder. The enormous crowd was utterly amazed. Most of them had never in their lives seen anything even close to such a sight. It was, in every sense, a thundering declaration of victory for alternating current. Tesla's great dream had lit up the night sky for all to see, and the whole world witnessed it with their own astonished eyes. Alternating current, it was now clear, was the future. Next came yet another decisive battle, perhaps the most important one of all. It was the battle for Niagara Falls, the giant and magnificent waterfall on the border between the United States and Canada. The sheer volume of water thundering over those falls was absolutely astonishing. For years, people had dreamed of using that immense natural force to generate electricity. It was truly a project of the century, a bold and ambitious engineering challenge, and every major company scrambled and fought to win it. In the end, after much debate, the alternating current plan came out on top once again. Tesla's design was the one chosen to harness the power of the falls. In the year 1895, the great power station began operating. The raw, roaring force of the waterfall was transformed into clean electrical power, and that power was then sent all the way to distant cities far beyond the falls. This success was incredibly important for the whole story. It proved, beyond any doubt, that alternating current could operate reliably on a truly massive scale. And here is a beautiful detail. That very power station continued to operate for many decades afterward, faithfully supplying electricity to a huge surrounding region. There is also one more deeply moving moment in this part of the story that I simply must share with you. During the height of the struggle, Westinghouse himself came under enormous financial pressure. He had risked nearly his entire company to support the cause of alternating current. At one point, things grew so difficult that he actually went to Tesla and asked him to give up the large royalty payments he was owed from his patents, just so the company could survive. And what did Tesla do? He agreed at once, without hesitation. He tore up the contract right there on the spot. He said that loyalty and friendship mattered far more to him than money ever could. It was an act of incredible generosity and idealism. But it also cost Tesla an absolute fortune, money that could have made him one of the richest men alive. That single choice tells you almost everything you need to know about the kind of man Nikola Tesla truly was. He valued the dream itself far more than the riches it could have brought him, and that purity of heart was both his greatest gift and his greatest weakness. By this point in the story, the outcome of the Great War was settled for good. Alternating current had won the final and complete victory. The War of the Currents had at last come to its close. And today, nearly every single power grid in the entire world runs on alternating current. That is the lasting legacy that Tesla left behind for all of us. The electrical outlet on the wall of your home, right now, carries alternating current. You enjoy the fruits of his lifelong work every single day, in countless ways. You may simply never have stopped to notice it. The impact of this old war has long since blended quietly into the fabric of ordinary life. Think about it for a moment. The phone charging beside your bed. The refrigerator humming in your kitchen. The traffic lights, the hospitals, the factories, the glowing skylines of every great city at night. All of it rests on a foundation that was laid down during that fierce battle more than a century ago. So this story is not some distant piece of history. It is hidden inside every single flick of a switch, every single quiet moment when light fills a room. It is closer to you than you ever imagined. But Tesla's brilliance went far, far beyond this one great victory. He had many other astonishing inventions and ideas. He created the Tesla coil, a remarkable device that could produce spectacular bolts of man-made lightning, crackling and arcing through the air. He devoted years to researching the wireless transmission of power. He dreamed boldly of letting electricity fly invisibly through the air, with no wires at all. He once built a small remote-controlled boat and demonstrated it to a stunned crowd, making him a true pioneer of remote control technology long before anyone else. He even conducted dramatic experiments in Colorado, where he generated gigantic artificial lightning bolts whose thunder could be heard for several kilometers around. Later, he built a tall and ambitious structure called Wardenclyffe Tower, hoping to use it to transmit both electrical power and wireless messages across great distances. He also made important contributions to the development of radio. For many years, he was locked in a patent dispute with another inventor named Marconi, and many years later, a court finally ruled in Tesla's favor on certain key patents. He truly was a dreamer in the deepest sense. His mind was always racing far ahead of his own time. Tesla did have his share of eccentricities, though. He was deeply and famously afraid of germs. He did not like to shake hands with people at all. He was strangely fascinated by the number 3, and he would often feel compelled to repeat certain actions 3 times before he was satisfied. In his later years, he grew very fond of pigeons, of all things. He fed them and cared for them with great devotion. He once said that one particular white pigeon was his favorite creature in all the world. These strange little quirks made him a deeply unusual and memorable figure. He often dined alone at the same restaurant, at the same table, served by the same waiter, with a precise stack of clean napkins beside his plate. He calculated the volume of his food before eating it. He could not bear to touch hair, or pearls, or round objects. But then again, geniuses often have something about them that sets them apart from everyone else, and in many ways that was part of his lasting charm. So what happened to our 2 main characters in the end? Their final fates were very different indeed. Let us start with Edison. In his later years, he remained extremely active and busy. He kept right on inventing and kept right on doing business. His companies grew larger and more powerful. He enjoyed both great fame and great fortune, and he was widely admired and celebrated as a national hero. He passed away in the year 1931, at the age of 84. The entire nation mourned his loss deeply. It is said that on the evening of his funeral, many people across the country dimmed their lights for a full minute, all at once, to honor the man who had given them light. He was the universally recognized king of inventors. No one could ever deny the scale of his achievements. He had become a living symbol of the American dream itself. Tesla's ending, sadly, was far more sorrowful. He was a pure and uncompromising idealist to the very end. He was simply never any good at handling money. Again and again, he spent his entire fortune chasing his grand dreams, pouring everything he had into his experiments. His greatest dream of all was the wireless transmission of power. He built that giant tower, Wardenclyffe, hoping to send free electricity to the whole wide world. But sadly, the funding dried up partway through the project. The great tower was eventually torn down and sold for scrap. Many of his most ambitious projects were never completed. He grew steadily poorer and more desperate as the years passed. His later years were terribly, achingly lonely. He passed away in the year 1943. He died alone in a quiet hotel room in New York, at the age of 86, with no family at all by his side. This genius, who had done so much to light up the entire world, walked his own final road in darkness and solitude. The contrast is almost too much to bear. It is enough to bring tears to your eyes. But history did not forget Nikola Tesla. Not at all. The official scientific unit for magnetic flux density was named in his honor. That unit is called the Tesla. Every single student who ever studies physics will come across his name in their textbooks. It is perhaps the finest and most fitting memorial he could ever have hoped for. Now let us look back together and truly think about it. Who actually won this great and terrible war? The answer, it turns out, is quite interesting and not at all simple. From a purely technical standpoint, Tesla clearly won. His alternating current came to rule the entire world, and it still does to this day. But from a business and financial standpoint, Edison clearly won. During his own lifetime, he gained both enormous fame and enormous wealth, and he lived out his days in glory and comfort. So these were really two very different kinds of victory. One was the triumph of a pure ideal. The other was the triumph of practical reality. Which one do you think is more precious? It is worth thinking about. Edison taught us the great value of hard work and persistence. He showed us how to turn raw ideas into real, useful products that improve daily life. He brought his inventions out of the laboratory and into ordinary homes. He proved, through sheer relentless effort, that even a boy once called slow could achieve true greatness. Tesla, on the other hand, taught us the power of dreaming. He dared to imagine things that everyone else called impossible. He paved the road that led toward the future. He proved that bold vision and imagination can quite literally light up the world. The honest truth is that both of these men were great, each in his own way. They simply chose two very different paths through life. One was practical, the other romantic. One focused intently on the present moment, while the other gazed always toward the distant future. And the most fascinating part of all is the role that time itself played. Time gave these two men two very different verdicts in the end. Edison was far more popular and celebrated in his own era. He was famous all across the world while he was still alive to enjoy it. Tesla, on the other hand, was only truly elevated to the status of legend long after his death. Today, an enormous number of people deeply admire Tesla. Even one of the most famous electric car companies in the entire world proudly uses his name as its banner. This tells us something quite profound. The vision and judgment of an era can change over time. True and lasting value can withstand the long test of the years. A misunderstood genius will, eventually, be seen and honored for who he really was. And that, perhaps, is the most tender and hopeful part of this entire story. There is also a deeper lesson hidden inside this rivalry, if we look closely. It shows us the two sides of human nature itself. On one side, there is the pure and shining ideal, the dream that refuses to compromise. On the other side, there is the practical, ambitious drive to build, to sell, and to win. And the truth is that inside every one of us, there lives a little bit of Tesla and a little bit of Edison. Sometimes we want to chase a beautiful dream, no matter the cost. Other times we have to face hard reality and make the practical choice. Learning how to balance those two voices inside us is one of the great challenges of a human life. Finally, I want to leave you with one last thought to carry with you. Genius and business are not really opposites, locked forever in battle. The truly ideal state is to hold both of them at once. You need to have dreams, and you also need to have the real ability to make them happen. You need ideals, and you also need to understand the hard realities of the world. Tesla and Edison were, in a way, like two sides of the very same coin. Together, whether they liked it or not, they lit up the entire modern world. The brightness and comfort we all enjoy today is something we genuinely owe to these two flawed and brilliant giants. Alright, that is where we will stop for today. The War of the Currents was thrilling, dramatic, and profound. It was never only a story about technology and machines. At its heart, it was always a story about human nature itself, about ambition and idealism, about pride and generosity. The next time you reach out and flip a light switch, I hope you will pause for just a second and remember this great and dramatic battle. Remember that there are so many human stories hidden behind something as simple as electricity. Technology is never cold and lifeless. It is always full of human passion, struggle, and dreams. And the people behind it, with all their genius and all their flaws, are every bit as fascinating as the machines they built. I truly hope you gained something today, and I hope you will remember these two unforgettable names: Edison and Tesla. If you enjoyed this story, please remember to subscribe to Thinker J. See you next time.